and welcome to Spectrum TV News at 4. I am Raymond Ita, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakuran. Let's take a look at the headlines. Reps probe illegal fintech loan apps threatening debtors. CBN says withdrawal limit will tackle kidnapping. Plus, IAEA discusses Ukraine nuclear plants protections with Russia. We'll bring you details of these stories and more in a moment. Mini bid round to spur new oil exploration and drilling activities in the prospective deep waters offshore Nigeria. The government, through its Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, also announced that 3 modular refineries will refine crude oil in 2023, as this will boost in-country refining capacity, according to the Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board. Both agencies stated this to journalists at the Oil Sector event. The Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Benga Komolafe, said it was the first in a series of bid rounds aimed at further development of the country's prospective petroleum basin. He said the exercise would be managed by the Commission in line with the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act as the statutory body responsible for ensuring compliance with petroleum laws, regulations and guidelines in the Nigerian upstream petroleum industry. In another development, the Federal Executive Council has approved 386.7 billion naira for various projects in the Federal Ministries of Power, Police Affairs, Environment, Works and Housing and Transportation. The various ministries, which was chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari at the Aso Rock Villa, Abuja. Minister of Power Abubakar Aliyu said the council had approved a memorandum for the provision of alternative power supply to Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, which he said had been disconnected from the national grid for 24 months due to insurgency. On legislative matters, the Senate has postponed the passage of the 2020 Finance Bill till December 28. Senate President Ahmad Lawan, who made these announcements during plenary today, explained that the Senate was postponing the budget passage because of challenges in receiving the report on the 2023 budget from the Appropriations Committee. He added that the Appropriations Bill came to the National Assembly from the Executive with some problems, and when the committee tried to reconcile the figures, the challenge became obvious and difficult to deal with. In the meantime, the Deputy Governor, Financial System Stability, Central Bank of Nigeria, Aisha Ahmad, today addressed the House of Representatives over the latest policy by the Apex Bank. The policy, among others, sets limits to cash withdrawals at the deposit money banks and other financial institutions. According to Ahmad, the CBN observed that about 94% of personnel be adversely affected by the reviewed limits. She said the Apex Bank introduced the new policy in phases, with successes recorded in some of the states where it was launched. Responding to a question on why the move is coming a few months before the general elections, Ahmad explained that the CBN, as an independent body, approved the new cash withdrawal limits that resolved to investigate the activities of illegal financial technology companies and mobile application lenders who threaten debtors and failing to repay their loans. At plenary today, the House mandated its Committee on Banking and Currency, Financial Crimes and Telecommunications to investigate the alleged sharp practices and abuses by fintech, online mobile digital loan apps, as well as companies in Nigeria, and report within 4 weeks. The resolution was based on the unanimous adoption of the motion of urgent public importance moved by a member of the House, Ahmed Satomi. On security matters now, troops of Operation Hadinkai have past 3 weeks in the northeast. Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Musa Danmadin, stated this while reviewing progress of military operations in Abuja. He said the troops also apprehended 22 terrorists, including 4 commanders and 18 collaborators within the theater during the period. Damadi noted that the troops rescued 30 abducted civilians, while 280 terrorists and their families, comprising 29 males, 73 females, and 148 children, surrendered to the military across the theater of operation. Still on security, the Chief of Naval Staff admired bunkering and crude oil theft in the country. He made this known at the decoration of the newly promoted Rear Admirals in Abuja, where he warned that any personnel caught would be made to face the stiff penalty of the law. The Chief of Defense Staff, Lucky Rabo, who was at the event, tasked the Navy with the elimination of crude oil theft in the country. And now in politics, European Union is looking to deploy an election observation mission, which consists of 11 election experts who will arrive in Abuja during the first half of January, and 40 long-term observers will join the mission to observe the February 25 and March 11, 2000. And Vice President of the European Commission, Josep Borrell, noted that the members of the European Parliament, Barry Andrew, has been appointed as chief observer for the mission to Nigeria. The High Representative and Vice President Borrell said the elections will be for crucial consolidation of Nigeria's democracy and for the stability of the region. Back here, Aquabamites have been urged to follow safety measures, especially while traveling, as they celebrate the Yuletide. Speaking on Spectrum Television's breakfast show Rise and Shine, the Public Enlightenment Officer and PRO of the FRSC Aquabam State, Paul James, advised drivers to drive within the approved speed limit. A correspondent completes this report.
The weeks leading to the Christmas and New Year celebrations are usually packed with lots of activities for the festivities, leading to lots of human and vehicular movements. Most times, the festivity rush exposes people to accidents and criminal activities like getting robbed or being kidnapped. With this, it has become a norm for security agencies to deploy more personnel to protect citizens, as well as dish out security advisory. The Public Enlightenment Officer and PRO, Federal Road Safety Corps, Aquarium State, Paul James, who spoke on Spectrum Television's Breakfast Show, advised citizens on precautionary measures during the season.
It's also important that while you're traveling, please let your family members know where and when you are traveling is important for safety reasons. You do not pay for that driver to go and then crash you on the road. So for that reason, don't sit back and allow the driver have his way, do whatever that he likes. We advise that when you are seated in a vehicle, please, where you observe the driver is being reckless, it's your duty and responsibility to also call that driver to order. Yes, you need to caution the driver because your safety is at stake. Should anything happen to that vehicle, you are also part of it. But where you observe the driver is not taking heed, then you can reach out to the management of that motor park and they will be able to call that driver to order. At worst case scenario, security operatives on the way can also help talk to the drivers.
He also spoke about the enlightenment given to drivers to keep people safe.
Virtually every morning we go from one motor park to the other to ensure that we interact, we interface with drivers and passengers even as they board, to be able to reawaken their consciousness to those safety tips. We do this also at churches. We do it in schools, though schools are vacated now, but in churches, marketplaces, in fact, all public areas, we carry out sensitization programs. All is geared towards reawakening people's conscience to the issue of safety.
Just like other security agencies, the Federal Road Safety Corps has deployed over 30,000 personnel across the country to keep the roads safe. It is, however, pertinent for citizens to follow safety measures during the Yuletide season. Edidion Martin, reporting for Spectrum Television.
In Africa, the UN Under-Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, says there has been a relative but not insignificant improvement in the security climate of the Central African Republic, CAR. Lacroix stated this during an official visit to Bangui, the capital of the CAR. The UN Under-Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations also stressed that there was no more work to be done to ensure stability in the troubled Central African nation. Recall that the Central Africa has been battling a civil war since 2013. Still in Africa, the United Nations Security Council has voted unanimously to extend the UN peacekeeping mission in Congo, known as MONUSCO. The force was the target of deadly summertime protests by Congolese who said the armed groups were still roaming the country's east and they were not being protected. The peacekeepers were also accused of retaliating against demonstrators, sometimes with force. Still to come in the news. Super Eagles end 2022 as the 5th best African team. Stay with us. Welcome back and many thanks for staying tuned. Moving now to the foreign scene, where Fiji's longtime Prime Minister says the military has been deployed to maintain law and order as the former coup leader refused to concede defeat after a close election. Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama, who has led Fiji since coming to power in a 2006 military coup, cited unsubstantiated reports of post-vote ethnic violence as a reason for the deployment. The vote looks set to end Bainimarama's long rule with an opposition coalition cobbled together by another former coup leader, STVNg, who has secured enough seats for a parliamentary majority. Now, elsewhere, the head of the UN nuclear watchdog today met in Moscow with officials from Russia's military and state atomic energy company. But this is as he pursues a long-running drive to set up a protection zone around a Russian-occupied nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Russian company Rostom described the talks on measures needed to safeguard Ukraine's Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and the surrounding region as substantive, useful and frank. The International Atomic Energy Agency's Director General Rafael Grossi indicated that more negotiations were needed after another round of necessary discussions. Away from that, the United Nations Security Council has called for Myanmar's junta to release Aung San Suu Kyi as it adopted its first ever resolution on the situation in the turmoil-ridden Southeast Asian country. Reports say the adoption marks a moment of relative council unity in a year in which divisions have been parties to respect human rights, fundamental freedoms and the rule of law. On our business news, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, is assuring Nigerians that the cash withdrawal limit will help tackle kidnapping and reduce the cost of minting new notes. Recall that the CBN had announced a weekly withdrawal limit of 100,000 naira for individuals and 1 million naira for corporate entities. Last night, the Apex Bank increased the maximum weekly limit for cash withdrawal across all channels to 500,000 naira and 5 million naira. A Deputy Governor, Financial System Stability, Aisha Ahmad, who briefed the House of Representatives, said the policy will also check money laundering nation's maritime sector under the aegis of the Seaports Terminal Operators of Nigeria, says the 2006 port concession has saved Nigeria $16 billion in 16 years. Chairman of the group, Vicky Hastrup, who said this in Lagos, explained that the exercise had been a success and brought tremendous improvement to the country's port system. She listed other benefits, including the injection of private capital into port development, freeing up government resources for other developmental purposes, elimination of port congestion, the modernization of the port, improved availability of cargo and handling equipment, among others. And now in health, Uganda has announced that it had received shipment of 2 more trial vaccines to test against a strain of Ebola responsible for dozens of deaths in the East African nation. But since authorities declared an Ebola outbreak on September 20, Uganda has reportedly registered 142 confirmed cases and 56 deaths. But the spread has slowed in recent weeks, sparking hope that the epidemic could be on its way out. The outbreak has been caused by the Sudan strain of the virus, for which there is currently no vaccine. But still in health, the Nigerian Medical Association, Ogun State Chapter, has warned against attacking its medical personnel. The NMA chairman, Dr. Kunle Ashimi, who gave the warning during a news conference in Abeokuta, urged parents and the relations to channel their complaints to the appropriate quarters. He said the patient or relative should... Now the Super Eagles of Nigeria have ended the year as Africa's 5th best team after a disappointing 2022 that saw them fail to make the World Cup. In the November 2022 FIFA ranking released today, the 3-time African champions are now 35th in the global pecking order. Morocco are the #1 team in Africa and 11th in the world, with Senegal at 19th, Tunisia at 30, and Cameroon at 33rd to complete the continent's first 5. Still in sports, former UFC champion Israel Adesanya and Kamaru Usman remain in the top 3 of the latest UFC round-for-pound rankings, despite both losing their belts in 2022. But the rankings were reportedly updated after the final pay-per-view of the year at the UFC 282 in Las Vegas. Reports say Adesanya takes the #3 spot in the latest rankings after he had previously dropped to #5. But this is the first time since unifying the belt in 2019 that Adesanya is no longer sitting atop the middleweight division. On our entertainment news, Africa's longest-running and most successful drama series, Tinsel, has hit a new milestone. Well, the show is hitting the 3,500 episode turning point today. Reports say in honor of the monumental event, Africa Magic is releasing a documentary titled Through the Decades, a Tinsel Story, which follows all the changes, faces, improvements, and even losses that the show has experienced over the 14 years of being aired on television. And that's all we have time for on the news. Many thanks for joining us. Don't forget you can follow us on our social media platforms and do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website at spectrumtv.ng. If you're watching the news at 4, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of the day's broadcast. I am Raymond Ita. Good afternoon.